Good afternoon. This is Nick Kremydas, Chief Executive Officer for the South Carolina Realtors, and welcome to our first broker update of 2019. And appreciate all of you taking time out of your schedules today. I'm pleased to be joined by your State Association President, Drew Streett from Garden City Realty. Drew, welcome.
Thank you, Nick. Glad to be here and looking forward to having a chance to chat with you guys about what's been going on in the state, as well as some of the national meetings that we've been to, and be able to update you as to what's been happening at SCR.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 2 p.m. and we will be recording the webinar this afternoon, and a couple of housekeeping things. If you notice in your control panel, there's a section where you can type in questions. And as we go through a series of updates this afternoon, please, if you have questions, type them into that question box. And Drew and I will go through those at the end of the webinar when we do a little Q&A at the end. I'm hoping 30-40 minutes to go through the updates and then tackle your questions at the end. So we're going to be mindful of your time this afternoon and look forward to sharing some good information with you. So Drew, why don't we go ahead and get started? Let's see. First things first. Let's talk about what happened at the Washington, D.C. meetings just a couple of weeks ago in D.C. As far as meetings go, not a lot of excitement at the board meeting. Drew, what do you think?
No, I think things were fairly status quo at the board meeting. They did a great job of getting out information beforehand, so there were no surprises. It was one of the best NAR Board of Director meetings I've been to.
There are a couple of actions of note from that meeting. The new ad campaign, That's Who We Are. I hope y'all have seen the videos and even downloaded some of the campaign resources and used them in your own marketing. That assessment, $35, was renewed for 3 more years. And I think the response from membership on the campaign has been very positive. Our own South Carolina Realtor, Jay Reinhardt, was elected as the 2020 Region Vice President for Region 4, which is representing Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee, and of course, South Carolina. So Jay will have that leadership role next year at NAR. In other election news, Realtor Leslie Ruda Smith from Texas was elected as first vice president, which means she'll be president of NAR in 2022, not that far off in the future. Drew, we had a great Hill visit day. Over 110 South Carolina realtors attended our Hill visits, met with our 9 congressmen. Drew, any takeaways from those Hill visits you wanted to share?
I think the Hill visits were outstanding this year. Sarah, SCR staff, did a great job setting up our appointments for us. We met with most of the legislators themselves, the congressmen, which was fantastic. We did have a few staff members that were there as well, and we really had some good meetings. They were very receptive to everything that we were talking to them about, including flood insurance and extending the NFIP, which they were able to help us get through just this past or earlier this week. So things are going well.
Absolutely. The Hill visits are my favorite meetings of the year, and to all the brokers out there listening today, if you've never attended an NAR meeting, the mid-year meetings in Washington, D.C. are the meetings to attend. You see just how big, just how strong a voice we have as an organization in Washington, and what a great job our national team does in DC. So I would encourage you budget and plan for that for 2020 if you can attend. Number one, give a lot of support to our RVP, Jay Reinhardt. And number 2, help us have a stronger voice on the Hill and drive our point home. Speaking of NFIP,
and Nick, I think just to add to that, fortunately, our issues are typically issues that are good for the American people. So we are very well received with pretty much everything that we go up there with when we're meeting with our congressmen, and they're usually excited to have time to make time to sit down with us, and you do get that one-on-one time, which is stuff that you don't necessarily get in other areas. So we had meetings with anywhere from 10 to probably, well, I guess what do we have the largest attending to the one congressman?
Scott, we have 53 realtors attend Senator Scott's meeting.
So they're spending a good amount of time with him, with 50 people or less. He definitely is there to. They're all there to. You have an opportunity to speak one-on-one. So if you can make it, it's definitely worthwhile.
And listen, if you missed the Washington D.C. meetings, we're having a first ever event in August. On August 15th, we're having our congressional conversation. We're a town hall meeting. We're inviting all of our congressmen to come, talk a little bit of real estate, and then hang out with us at a reception following the meeting. So look for that in your emails, and hopefully you can register and attend. This will be August 15th. But Drew, you mentioned flood insurance a minute ago, and if you've been following the news, you know there was possibility that we were going to have a lapse over the weekend. Fortunately, Congress acted on a standalone bill that gave us a 2-week extension. And fortunately today, some breaking news for you. The larger bill that dealt with disaster relief, including monies for storms, Puerto Rico, and some other parts of the country, was passed today by the House and Senate, which will extend flood insurance now through September 30th, kicking the can a little bit further down the road, which marks the 12th extension in just the last 2 years of the program.
The good thing about this extension this time is it's not, although it's a short-term extension, the reason they had September 30th was for a reason. That's the end of their fiscal year, so they were trying to coincide with next year's budget, and hopefully we can get some long-term reform next year.
Yeah, and absolutely right. And the concern is, September 30th is we're still in the middle of hurricane season, and we're hopeful that Congress can pass meaningful long-term reform. NAR is pushing for a 5-year reauthorization that has significant reforms, particularly in dealing with repeat flood properties and things like that. But this kicking the can down the road is kind of indicative of what's happening in Congress. And I think we'll see more of this behavior and the lack of any real progress until maybe after the 2020 elections. It seems to be the message we heard over and over in DC here recently.
We did. The congressmen were very clear in that they couldn't make, that they wanted to do things that were good, but nobody really wanted to work together. It's just unfortunate the way that it is, and it's pretty much was very clear that until the election's over, things are going to continue to be the status quo of everything that you see on the news right now.
Absolutely. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about a couple of legal updates. I want to briefly cover a few topics. I have attached a couple of documents to your webinar, and you'll see them in your control panel under the handout tab. There should be 2 there that you can download. Don't do that right now, but download them before we finish so that you can have this information at hand. But I'm not going to go into the details on all of these, but I did want to highlight a couple of them. Wire fraud is still a very prevalent problem across not just South Carolina, but across the country. Spammers and these criminals are able to duplicate, infiltrate, and confiscate your email passwords and usernames, and they're tricking not just clients and customers and into wiring funds, but they're tricking realtors, and lately they've been targeting law firms. And here's the thing that you need to be aware of as you work with these attorneys across the state. I've attended a couple of work sessions with the real estate section of the bar, And a lot of these attorneys will not disclose, for obvious reasons, to the public that they've been the subject of a wire fraud. They don't want to harm their reputation or seem that they're not a good firm to work with. If you're not using our wire fraud disclosure form, please use something like it. You've got to alert your clients and customers that this possibility exists and that they should only provide sensitive financial information to trusted sources.
And confirm.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest thing. Don't trust that you get an email, that it comes from what looks like an email they've been receiving information from the whole time.
The handout has a website link where you can report fraud incidents, and there's some good training materials there that you can use with your team and with your agents in your office. I don't even know where to begin with the next topic, Drew, but you know, my phone has rung twice already today with cold calling, spam, and just these auto dial robocalls that are just incessant, and I know they're driving all of us crazy. But keep in mind that a lot of our members use texting and cold calling as part of their business. Don't forget to remind your agents that they still have to comply with federal laws that regulate how you can text and call. Sometimes the do not call list gets lost in the translation. Sometimes people forget about it because it's been on the books for so long. It doesn't seem to have a whole lot of effect, to be honest, as we get more and more of these kind of calls. But all it takes is one complaint and one charge to be filed against your company. Could result in very expensive fines and fees. So remind your agents to comply with the federal texting and do not call rules. All right, on a slightly less sexy topic is the issue of independent contractor status. Just wanted to make you aware that there are an increasing number of lawsuits that have been filed in different parts of the country challenging independent contractor status. And all of these revolve around broker controls around their agency models. So just make sure that you have first and foremost, make sure you're using a written independent contractor agreement. We've got one in our SCR forms library that you can use that can protect you in such arrangements. Make sure that you're not mandating an overly burdensome amount of requirements on your agents. And give your agents the freedom to work, you know, basically on their schedule. You've got to be very careful of mandating meetings, office duties, things like that when you're working with independent contractors. So a quick update on that. We heard a little bit of an update on this in Washington, dealing with copyright infringement. Too often, and this typically involves the copyright involving photographs. NAR funded a legal case that's ongoing where photographs that were displayed through an IDX that weren't properly permissioned were being challenged. There was another interesting case where a broker had copied the floor plan of a building and put that in the MLS. The builder is suing the MLS and the broker for copyright protection of their floor plans. Just make sure that when you are licensing or that when you are using photographs and other third-party content, that you're obtaining either ownership or a broad exclusive license for the use of those items. And make sure that you
That includes
understand.
other agents. I think we know that, but just to be clear, because that happens all the time, where somebody has an amazing shot of a condo project and there's 300 properties in there, and people will reuse that picture that does not belong to them. So make sure that any pictures or any material you use, without a doubt, is that you have permission to use it.
Thanks, Drew. It's a simple simple instructions, but too often we see agents that are literally copying and pasting pictures off a Google image search, and not really worried about the copyright issues that would entail from that. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about what NAR is doing with the class action antitrust litigation. I know you've probably received updates from directly from our general counsel at NAR, Katie Johnson, and I've also just want to make sure that you know that kind of where we stand on the issue as we are here now already in June. There have been actually 3 separate class action antitrust litigation that have been filed. They're all related, and in all 3 cases, the plaintiffs allege that home sellers are unfairly paying the commissions of buyers' brokers. On May 17th, a couple of weeks ago, NAR and the other defendants filed a motion to dismiss, saying that the grounds for the lawsuit are baseless, and that they provide to vigorously defend the NAR policies, rules, MLS, etc. And NAR has provided a great talking point response to the lawsuit. In response to the motion to dismiss, interestingly enough, the plaintiff's attorneys have filed a motion to update basically their complaint. And that actually, according to NAR counsel, shows that the plaintiff's attorneys' original complaint may not have been as good as it could have been or should have been, and they're going back and rethinking their case, which means the motion to dismiss is put on the table, so to speak. It's put on hold until this other filing can occur, and then NAR will have to decide whether to file another motion to dismiss based on the amended complaint. What we do know is that we don't really know how long this is going to take. NAR General Counsel has told us that they're prepared to go the long term on this issue. The plaintiff's attorneys have said that cases like this typically take anywhere from 7 to 10 years. So the best advice I can give you is to stay tuned and just keep following and reading the updates as we get them from NAR. It's still, when you read all the materials, there just seems to be either a lack of understanding or just a misunderstanding of the industry practices and businesses, what the NAR policies and rules actually say. But interestingly enough, and many think that this is related, but the Department of Justice has also opened up an investigation, or at least has requested information from one of the largest MLS providers in the country, wanting to see data regarding buyer broker compensation and commissions. So it leads me to believe that this isn't something that's just going to be dismissed by a motion. I think this is going to go into discovery, which is going to be very expensive in the long run. NAR budgeted just just under 2 million in the budget for next year. Drew?
Yep, that's actually what I was going to mention. Was that was a topic discussion, and NAR is budgeting and preparing to spend the money to defend the case.
Yes, sir. So that's a quick update on the class action litigation. So let me cover a couple of other things here real quick. We just finished the first half of a legislative session, and here's what's the most staggering news out of this session. 34, I think that's right, it's either 33 or 34 bills were enacted into law this session. 34. Typically that number is about, I don't know, 5 to 7 times higher than that. There was a big article, I think it was in the Post and Courier, that was titled the Do Nothing Legislative Session. And when you look at, if you base that on the number of bills that have passed, then there's some argument that you can make to that. We've laid the groundwork for a number of issues, property tax reform being kind of the big one. I'll touch on that in a minute. But I know that Drew, our leadership team, our legislative committee chair, Rhea Smith, and others spent a lot of time at the State House this year testifying before committees, meeting with leadership, and we ended up having a very productive year, despite the fact that the legislature moved rather slowly this year. And I wanted to cover a couple of quick updates, if I could. So one of the bills that did become law is our recording fee bill. The legislature passed legislation that now has a flat charge for recording a deed and recording mortgages and other documents. So a deed is going to cost $15 to record, and mortgages and other documents are going to cost $25. Having a flat uniform fee that's the same all across the state not only benefits our members, but it makes closings a little bit smoother. No mistakes on counting the number of pages, because many of you know that those charges were based on a per page cost in the past. It's going to be, I think, a good win for consumers as well. And Drew, I'm going to roll through these, so if you want to jump in, just go ahead. Interesting legislation nationally dealing with service animals. We've had a lot of landlords complain about tenants that are basically misrepresenting their dog or cat or chicken or peacock as a potential service animal, and ending up causing lots of damage to property that the landlords then have to pay and incur. So we've put in some provisions that would make it a civil penalty to misrepresent an animal as a service animal, giving our landlords a little bit more protection, but still giving those individuals that have a legitimate need for a service animal to be able to provide that either through their doctor or physician, and protect both parties in that case. So good.
You have to be really careful with that, because there are two different types of animals there. You got a service animal and you have an emotional support animal. I spent some time in a class when we were in Washington on this subject, and both of which start out with FHA issues. So you need to make sure that you study the questions that you are allowed to ask, and there's only a couple of questions that you are allowed to ask, and they're very, very specific on that. So make sure you don't get in trouble there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Drew. A couple of bills that passed one body but not the other that will be pending in January. The first one is the Notary Bill. We are one of a few states that have actually, this is passed out of the Senate unanimously and would allow notarization to occur by electronic means. Again, allowing to speed up closing processes, and these digital signatures will help push us to that dream of having a paperless transaction, which we're still missing in a few cases. And I know thanks to Representative Alan Clemens, which has been pushing this in the House, and this was a pretty big win to get it out of the Senate real quickly, and I'm hoping that the House takes it up early in January. Another property tax bill dealing with rollback taxes surprisingly caught a little fire this session, passed unanimously out of the House to reduce the number of years of rollback taxes on agricultural property from its current 5 years to only 3 years. So while we're going to push to lower that even more in the Senate, even a 5 to 3 year reduction is a massive savings for buyers of these properties that want to convert them to other uses, and this would be a real nice shot, an injection into that, and create an economic boost, I believe, for our state. And the last legislative issue, this deals with, this was a little help for our military personnel. We have a lot of military personnel who hold a professional license, like a real estate license and others, that often are have to be deployed in other states or other countries. And this allows them to be able to keep their license in a temporary status until they return back to their home state. So it's a nice gesture to help our men and women that are serving our country. This is pending in the Senate right now, and we hope to get that passed in January. And the last legislative issue I wanted to cover with you real quick has to do with property taxes that I mentioned. We are partnering with the Chamber of Commerce on a comprehensive study of Act 388, our property tax laws, its impact on local government, our business community, and homeowners, to put together a plan for January to address what really is kind of the missing piece of our, the only holdback I see on our economy in South Carolina is the imbalance between 4% and 6% properties. And the mom and pop businesses that create most of the jobs in our state, this is Act 388 is a real wet blanket on their growth and innovation. And I hope that through our partnership with the Chamber, we've agreed to hire the Lincoln Institute, which is a national bipartisan property tax think tank, to research the issues that we have here in South Carolina. I think we're going to see for the first time since Act 388 was passed in 2006, an opportunity for some real meaningful reform. And so stay tuned. We're going to have a lot more for that, a lot more on that issue later this fall and going into the next legislative session. So with that,
I'll just add one thing real quick, Nick, with regards to legislative things that are going on around the state. Guys, we need your help. You are the hands and feet that are out there in the community. We can't be everywhere all the time. So if you see things that are going on with regards to impact fees or anything that you feel like is going to affect our industry, please notify your local association, notify us, let us know so we can look into it and try to help those situations.
Absolutely. Thank you, Drew. As a reminder, we are a member-driven organization, and our success at the State House succeeds or fails based on your involvement. And if you're not signed up for our broker involvement program, I'll have that in the notes to you and the follow-up email, along with copies of these documents. So now we're going to do a little Q&A. I see some questions rolling in, I'm going to pop these on the screen here, and I won't mention any names unless you want me to. And Drew, why don't let's look at the first one here. It says, it asks any particulars that we need to know about the ICA. I'm assuming that's the independent contractor agreement. Anything that should be avoided with independent contractors. The main liability, the risk reduction tool you can use is having a written independent contractor agreement. That starts with our SCR form that you can download, or it's in your zip form or .loop library. Please take a look at that. That's a great starting point. There's some good resources on realtor.org as well. But the main point I would leave you with is an independent contractor. You've got those tests that the IRS has set out, and the more you restrict the ability of that agent to operate in an independent fashion, the more you risk losing that independent contractor status. And there are lawsuits in California and other states that are challenging that. I can't imagine a business model where all of our agents suddenly become employees. Just think about how that would impact each of your offices.
As an agent and as a broker and or company owner, that would be a major shift and swing in our system for sure.
So we got a question about any updates on signs, HOAs. We were very successful in passing some significant HOA reform legislation last year. There's no update that I know of on having either a less or more restrictive sign provisions in the law. I know that there are some communities where you can't have a for sale sign anywhere on the property or even in the window of the house. And others have fewer restrictions. So no update on that at this point, but I'll make sure I'll get our legislative team to get me an update and let us know if there's any change to that.
I know Representative Hewitt has been working with his colleagues to come up with something, because he's a practicing realtor as well. He understands our issues there, and I know that he has been working with them, basically telling them that the HOAs are requiring us to break state law to conform to their sign code. So definitely some changes, and I think that we'll have some good things happen in the next legislative session on that.
Thank you, Drew. Next question is, what is the status on business license tax reform? I can tell you what my preference would be on business license tax reform. But there is, this summer, Lindsay Jackson, our chief lobbyist, is meeting with a group of other business interests, the municipal association that represents all the cities. And in a group discussion, there was a joint task force that was created by legislation to look at business license tax reform. I don't know if y'all know this, but for most of our cities across the state, business license taxes make up more than half the revenue for our cities in South Carolina. That's an extraordinary burden to slap on the back of our businesses. And as you know, as real estate firms and corporations, you pay a higher share than other businesses do. They seem to target us all across the state because of our visibility online and on the street. My hope is that what we're pushing for is having a one-stop shop through the state where you don't have to pay a business license fee to every little town and municipality that you do business in. There are some firms that have to have a CPA working full-time just to calculate the 30 different business license fees they have to pay. It's an undue burden on businesses, and it's something we're going to continue to push for. So a great question here about any news in regards to agent commissions being taxed. Yes, there is some news there. This past spring, the legislature, it was Representative Tommy Pope, who was chairing a special tax committee for the House Speaker, introduced a sales tax reform bill. This is part of a multi-pronged attack, multi-pronged strategy on tax reform in South Carolina. The first being income tax, sales tax being number 2, and property tax being number 3. In that sales tax bill that was dropped, which caused a lot of our jobs to drop as well, included a sales tax on real estate commissions and lawyers and barbers and just about every service profession out there. Obviously, we don't support that as an industry or as an association. Representative Pope heard that message loud and clear. His response back to us was, this was my job as the task force chairman. It's now in the hands of the Ways and Means Committee that's chaired by Representative Merle Smith. We've got several meetings planned with Merle Smith this summer. We hope that we don't have to push the nuclear button on this issue. But I think I can count on all of you to help if we need to. Our friends in the legislature are not going to allow a tax bill like this that would negatively impact so many industries. So I think that I think we're going to be okay in the long run.
That's the good thing, yes, Nick. I agree that they cast such a wide net. There's so many different industries that are affected by what they're doing at this point. As Nick said, we've had conversations. We feel very confident at this point that it's not going to have legs, but it is going to open a conversation to the entire tax code. But it's something that, like Nick said, we need to monitor. We need to keep our finger on the pulse and be prepared to act if we need to. Hopefully, I can hold Nick off of the nuclear button because he likes to carry that football around and wants to push the button. But hopefully, we can hold him away and we could take care of this without having to go that route.
Thanks, Drew. Byron, our general counsel, asked me to mention that our forms committee has been very busy this year. We've had 2 quarterly meetings. Look for some revisions to the sales agreements and some others later this fall. With any implementation of forms changes would not take place until January 1st, giving all of us plenty of time to review the forms, provide feedback and input before they're implemented into the field. So we're going to take our time, make sure that these are fully vetted, and we'll have some more updates. It's a little early in the process to go into any details right now because the committee's still hashing out a lot of it, but we'll have some feedback for you by September, I think, at the latest. Question about robocalls and why they're so prevalent. Is it the government's fault? Yes, it is. I think we'll just leave that one alone and move on to the next question. What changes did they make, if any, on trust accounts? Wow, I can't believe I forgot this in our state report. Attached to this, one of the documents I've attached in your control panel is the Commission's new trust account guidelines booklet. If for those of you that are seasoned, you'll remember that there was this huge blue book years ago that hadn't been updated in many a year. Thanks to Dana Brothers and others that worked on this task force, they've got a new, relatively concise, it's about 30 pages, with trust account guideline policies. And one of the cool things that they've added are these working flow charts for property managers and residential brokers. It's a great new resource. No real changes from your standard kind of operating policies, but there are it's more up to date and reflects the current thinking of the Real Estate Commission. So I would encourage you to check out the trust account guidelines handout. And I know our legal team has put out a short bulletin on with just a few kind of key highlights from the document, but nothing, no substantive changes, certainly no changes in the law, but just a more up-to-date kind of user-friendly guideline for our members when they have questions. So I don't see any other questions. So Drew, I'll give them one more minute, but any closing remarks from your standpoint?
I just want to reiterate that at SCR we are really trying our best to be here and be available for you. If you have questions or suggestions for us, we'd certainly love to hear it. Love to get that feedback. Our focus this year has really been on the legislative front. We're trying our best to be proactive, and I'm so thankful that Lindsay has done such an outstanding job for us at the Statehouse. Legislative Chair Rhea Smith has done an outstanding job for us. The entire committee has really been there and stepped up to the challenge because we want to be at the forefront of everything that happens at the Statehouse legislatively. We want everyone there to reach out to us with questions before they do anything. And we're starting to see that tide shift a little bit and hopefully being the true trusted source of real estate information to everyone in the state of South Carolina. So thank you for your help and putting us on some issues and bringing some great points up.
Thank you, Mr. President, and to all the brokers on the line, thank you for your time and attention this afternoon. You can always reach me at nick@screaltors.org. Drew's contact information is also in our weekly emails. Feel free to email either one of us with ideas or updates or things that we can help you with. And let me know if this format works for you, if we should do these more often. Give me your feedback, shoot me an email or a text, and let me know what you're thinking, and we'll continue to provide the best service we can to you. In the meantime, have a great rest of the week, and really appreciate your time and attention. President Drew, thank you for your time today, and I hope to see all of you real soon. Take care.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
Nick.
afternoon.
I hope everybody noticed the strategically placed gamecock on the desk back there. That thing seems to move around to whatever position he's facing in the office to make sure everybody gets a good opportunity to say go Gamecocks.
Thanks for getting me in trouble, Drew. Y'all have a great afternoon.